Talking up Notre Dame football, we got Nick Shapkowski on the line. You can catch him on Irish Wire ND. You see the website there on the banner. Speaking of recruiting, another fine recruiting class with 26 enrollees for 2021, ninth rated class according to the 247 Sports Composite. But there's still a little bit of work to be done before that second signing day in February.
Yeah, there's still one player out there that most people, when you talk to anyone within the program, feel good about signing with Notre Dame ultimately. It was a bit of a surprise when he didn't sign in the early signing period. That's running back Logan Diggs, rated as a 3-star prospect from most outlets from the state of Louisiana, was an all-state player in the state of Louisiana, got a late offer from LSU just days before the early signing period opened, and surprised some people. The fact that he made it public, I think, brought some attention that some people weren't thinking was going to go towards him and thought for sure he was going to be signed by now. Most people you talk to still feel good about where he ends up. That's not a guarantee of any means, but that's kind of the one only player that remains out there that will or will not choose Notre Dame, and the other option there would be LSU. From everything I've heard, and maybe people are just trying to look at it through their Irish glasses or whatever it might be, but most people are pretty optimistic that he ends up signing, but that would be the one name that remains out there.
We discussed Brian Kelly's upgrade of the program, whether people think it's enough or not, certainly has been reflected in the NFL draft. So for the 2021 draft, your thoughts about who's leaving, who's staying, and who might have made a mistake or who might be a surprise one way or the other?
I think that it's no surprise you're going to see Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He's going to be, he could really, if he was an inch taller, he'd probably be an easy top 15, and you'd make an argument that he could be a top 10 pick. His NFL body isn't perfect when they break him down combine wise and pro days and measure every little detail of every little thing. So I think he'll probably end up being in the back half of the first round just because of that. But I like to compare him as a player at Notre Dame. He was Jaylen Smith as Jaylen Smith was used correctly by Brian Van Gorder, the old defensive coordinator there. Like, Jaylen Smith has all the talent in the world. Owusu-Koramoah does as well. A little bit smaller in size than Smith, than what you usually like the linebackers to be NFL-wise, but he's going to be a heck of an athlete for someone there. He's going to be their one first-round pick. Maybe Liam Eichenberg, the left tackle, can sneak into a first round. A guy that I'm very high on, and I'm surprised each time I kind of read the draft profiles and see mock drafts of where he ends up going, is offensive guard Aaron Banks. I thought that he played that position as well as anyone in the country this year. I thought when the Notre Dame beat Clemson that you could argue that he was the best player on the field outside of Owusu-Koramoah in that game. When Notre Dame needed yards, that's where they went to. There was no big thing in the first Notre Dame Clemson game in the 2018 Cotton Bowl was the pressures that were just coming from the inside. That wasn't to be found in that game against Clemson. And he was a huge reason for that. He was a huge reason for Ian Book being able to extend plays, scramble, and win that game. I think that someone, if he ends up being a third-round pick like a lot of these projections have him as, that's going to be a steal of a middle-round draft pick for a team at that position. And the one that's really interesting that I think took a lot of Notre Dame fans and followers by surprise was tight end Tommy Tremble. Tommy Tremble, if you watch Notre Dame games, they like to throw 3 tight ends out there. And you could argue that he was the most violent of any of those blockers of the 3 tight ends that they like to run behind. Didn't always have big-time reception numbers, but could make some big-time catches along the way. Opener in 2019 against Louisville, he played a very good game. I think he had no touchdowns, but he had 2 big receptions to get Notre Dame down near the goal line and made some big catches against that Clemson game this year as well, the regular season one at least. It was a bit of a surprise when you look at his numbers and see someone with, I think, under 20 receptions for the year is what he had. So it was a little bit interesting. Then you have to see from the pros perspective, all right, well, Michael Mayer's also there at tight end. He's going to get the bulk of targets going into next year. Is Tremble going to gain anything NFL-wise in the eyes of scouts if he's to stay another year? Tough to argue against him going, but I don't know if he has a ton to gain necessarily from it. I think he could have used another year to showcase his receiving skills because I think that those weren't fully on display.
Tremble's blocking was so effective. I saw it highlighted on a number of the major studio shows leading into the ACC championship game in the college football playoff.